My husband and I have been fortunate enough to travel the world, and one of the best things about traveling is trying cuisines from other countries. So today we're going to be making one of my French favorites. Today we're going to be making beef bourguignon.
For today's recipe, you're going to need a half pound of bacon chopped, 2 to 2.5 pounds of beef chuck roast, salt and pepper to taste, 1 medium onion, a tablespoon of butter, 1 8-ounce package of white cap mushrooms, a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 2 cloves of garlic, 3/4 cup of red wine, and I recommend using either Merlot or Cabernet Sauvignon, 1 teaspoon of beef bouillon powder, a bouquet de garni, we'll talk about that, water to cover, and chives and sour cream for garnish. Today we are going to be cooking with red wine, and you want to choose a red wine that you would actually drink, something that you would enjoy a glass of with your dinner. There are plenty of affordable red wines on the market, and I recommend either a Merlot or a Cabernet Sauvignon. This is not the time where you want to try to substitute red wine vinegar. The flavor profiles are just completely different, and it would not go well in this dish. And again, you want to get everything together. I have my meat, I have my mushrooms, my wine, I have my spices, and my bacon. Now, I'm very lucky because my husband is an amazing barbecue chef. So he makes homemade bacon and he saves me the nice little chunky end pieces, and I kind of cut them up. You can do the same thing with regular store-bought bacon. Now I've preheated my slow cooker, and I'm going to go ahead and just add my bacon bits in there. And like I said, you can use chunks of bacon, or you can just take about 8 slices and just chop those up. And I'm going to go ahead and basically cook these, just kind of render them down a little bit. I'm not going to worry about the grease because, you know, fat is flavor. So we're going to keep that in there, but we're going to let these start to cook down. While the bacon is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this chuck roast into nice big bite-sized chunks. And you just want to cut right through. You don't have to worry about getting these too small. These are going to cook down super duper tender. So just go ahead and cut through, and then cut that meat into nice big chunks. The meat is cut and my bacon is nice and brown, so I'm going to scoop that out and reserve it for later. I do not want to lose the bacon dripping, so I'm actually going to take my pan and pour this bacon fat into the bowl with my bacon pieces, because I'm going to add that back in later. Fat is flavor, so we do not want to lose this precious liquid gold. Now into my hot pan, I am going to take the meat that I just cut into chunks, and what I want to do is just a light browning on each side. It's going to help it kind of hold its form a little bit while it's cooking, because we are going to simmer this for a good while today, and I don't want my meat just to disintegrate. So I just want to get a little bit of crust. Don't overcrowd your pan. It will cut the temperature of your pan down, but you just want to go ahead and brown it a little bit on each side, and you may have to do this in a couple of batches. Now, while you're browning the meat, you want to add just a sprinkle of pepper and a sprinkle of kosher salt on the top. You will do that also when you flip it over. You want to go kind of sparingly here at the beginning, because you don't want to add too much salt. You want to have a little room there at the end. You can always add more salt if it needs it, but you can't take salt away. So kind of work with a light hand. Once you've browned the meat on both sides, you're just going to remove it from the pan and save it for later. I've set my meat aside, so let's go ahead and chop this onion. Now for this recipe, I prefer my onion to be in fairly small slices, so just go ahead and cut it up. If you like big chunks, leave it in big chunks. I just prefer smaller pieces. Now for my cat mushrooms, I have rinsed these just a little bit and allowed the extra water to drain off. I do not want tiny pieces, so I'm just going to quarter these. So just quarter these, set them aside, and then we're going to put these and our onions together to saute. I've chopped my onions and my mushrooms, and now I'm going to get ready to saute these in butter. Again, I have my pan hot, and I'm just going to put a tablespoon of butter in there and just move it around, let it melt. And into this melted butter, I'm going to put my onions, and I'm going to let them kind of saute a little bit till they start to get soft before I add my mushrooms. Now that my onions are starting to get soft, I want to just give them a good stir. I don't want these to burn, but I think it's time for us to add some mushrooms. And we'll go ahead and just dump these quartered mushrooms down in here. I do want to give them a good stir so they get down in that butter and those delicious onion oils that have been released. And while these are cooking together, I'm going to add just a little pinch of salt. Now this is going to help the mushrooms to release their liquid so that they can cook down a little bit quicker. And at this point, I'm also going to add the cayenne pepper. And that flavor is going to be absorbed into our veggies and go on to help flavor our stew. While the mushrooms are cooking down, I'm going to go ahead and mince my garlic. And when you work with fresh garlic, you've got to get it out of the paper shell. So just put it under the blade of your knife and give it a good smash, and you'll be able to peel that paper coating off just very, very easily. Now, we're going to be mincing this garlic, so you want to chop it into small pieces, but then go ahead and chop it even finer because you don't want huge chunks of garlic floating around in this dish. My mushrooms and onions have cooked down, so we're ready to start putting this dish together. We're going to go ahead and add our garlic in, and we're going to cook this for just a couple more minutes. I didn't want to add the garlic too early because garlic can burn very easily, and I want it to start to soften and release those beautiful garlic oils, but I don't want it to burn. So I'm going to give it just a couple minutes, and you can already smell this delicious aroma coming up from this mixture. My garlic has had a couple minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and start adding ingredients back, and we're going to start with the bacon that we fried earlier. Now I am adding the bacon drippings back in. Guys, real fat is real flavor. Go ahead and cook with it. If you don't want that extra fat later on, you can always chill your dish at the end and scoop that fat off the top. But the mushrooms are nicely browned, and this just smells heavenly. We added our bacon in, and it is warmed up and everything's quite sizzling, and we have a beautiful brown mixture. And we're going to go ahead and start adding the rest of our ingredients, and we're going to start with the red wine. Go ahead and just dump it in there right on top. Give it a good mix. Next, we're going to add in our bouillon powder. And our bouquet garni. Now I will give you a little information about this in just a few minutes, but go ahead and drop it in there. Seems a little strange, but there's a method to the madness. And then we're going to add our beef back in. Go ahead and just pour it right back in. Make sure you get all those juices that have leached out and add those back into the pan as well. And then on top of this, I am going to pour just enough water to cover the meat. I don't want to drown it. I just want to cover the meat. And we're going to be simmering this mixture for about 3 hours. Now I want to bring my meat up to a boil, and after it's reached a boil, I'm going to place the lid on it, and I'm going to put this on simmer for 3 hours. This recipe calls for a bouquet de garni. Now that sounds really fancy, but you can actually make these sachets right in your own kitchen. You're going to be using a little piece of cheesecloth, some butcher's twine, and some dried herbs. You'll want to cut a rectangle of cheesecloth and just go ahead and fold it over. You want to have a double layer. And we're going to place our herbs in the middle. And we're going to start with a bay leaf. Then we're going to add a tablespoon each of dried thyme, some dried rosemary, and this rosemary is from my garden this year, and the pieces are kind of large. Might have to help it come out a little bit. And then dried parsley. And then all you have to do is just fold up the edges. You want to make sure that You fold every edge in so that the stuff can't escape, because you will take this out before you serve dinner, and just tie it up nice and tight with your butcher's twine. Now, I make these ahead of time and I save them in a mason jar so that when it comes time to make this recipe, all I have to do is reach in and grab one and I'm good to go. So be sure to make a few and save them for later. Our bourguignon has been simmering for 3 hours and we have this beautiful dark brown liquid, but it is a little bit runny. So for the last 10 minutes, go ahead, take the lid off, bump it up to a boil, and this is going to help to reduce that liquid just to be a little bit thicker. Before serving, you're going to remove your bouquet de garni, and then this is a luscious, rich stew which you can eat all by itself. My family likes it with a dollop of sour cream and fresh chives. Enjoy! I want to just take a second and say a very special, heartfelt thank you to my good friend Grant Meacham, who 6 months ago challenged me to make these videos. I honestly didn't think that I would be able to do it, but here we are, 26 episodes in, and this has been such a blessing for me. I want to say thank you so much to those of you who have sent me messages that you have enjoyed the things that you've made from my videos, and I am looking forward to the day when we can all get back together around the table and we can share these recipes together. I hope you enjoyed today's recipe. If you'd like them to continue, be sure to like, comment, and share. Thanks, guys.